The deep space scanner made a soft beeping sound that broke the quiet hum of the bridge. Commander Jake Morrison looked up from his morning coffee and walked over to the communications station, where Lieutenant Lisa Parker was staring at her screen with wide eyes. "What do you have, Lisa?" Jake asked, setting his cup down on the nearest console. "Sir, I'm picking up signals from Sector 7. They're not from any human colony or ship." Lisa's fingers moved quickly across her keyboard. "The patterns are completely different from anything we've seen before." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. After 300 years of space travel, humanity had never encountered another intelligent species. They had found plenty of planets with life, but nothing that could build ships or send messages across the stars. "Are you sure it's not just some kind of natural phenomenon?" Jake asked, though he could already see from Lisa's expression that she was certain. "No, sir. These signals are clearly artificial. They're following mathematical patterns that only an intelligent species could create." Lisa turned her screen toward Jake. "Look at this sequence here. It's the prime numbers from 1 to 100. Then it switches to the Fibonacci sequence." Dr. Ben Rodriguez, the chief science officer, hurried over from his station. His usually calm face showed excitement mixed with concern. "Commander, if Lieutenant Parker is right, this could be the most important discovery in human history." Jake nodded slowly. The USS Valiant was a deep space exploration vessel designed for long missions far from Earth. They had been mapping new star systems for the past 2 years, but nothing had prepared them for this moment. "Set course for Sector 7, Jake ordered, "and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we may have found something extraordinary." The journey to Sector 7 took 6 hours. During that time, the signals grew stronger and more complex. Lisa worked with Dr. Rodriguez to decode what they could. The messages seemed to be some kind of greeting, repeated over and over in different mathematical languages. "They're trying to communicate," Dr. Rodriguez said as he studied the data. "They're showing us that they understand mathematics, physics, and chemistry. It's like they're proving their intelligence to us." Jake stood on the bridge, watching the stars scroll past on the main screen. His crew was excited, but he felt a growing sense of unease. If these aliens were so advanced that they could send complex messages across space, what else could they do? "Contact ahead, sir," reported Lieutenant Tom Carter from the navigation station. "I'm seeing multiple objects on the scanner. They're big, really big." The main screen flickered and then showed the view ahead of them. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Floating in space were 3 ships unlike anything humanity had ever built. They were smooth and curved, like giant silver teardrops, each one easily 10 times the size of the Valiant. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez. "They're beautiful." Alien ships seemed to glow with their own inner light. There were no visible weapons or engines, just perfect flowing lines that made human ships look crude and primitive by comparison. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission," Lisa said, her voice shaking slightly. "It's in English." Jake blinked in surprise. "English? How is that possible?" "I don't know, sir. The voice sounds artificial, like it's being created by a computer." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with a smooth musical voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Greetings, humans of the vessel Valiant. We are the Zephyrians of the Galactic Sovereignty. We have been observing your species for some time. We come in peace and friendship." Jake exchanged glances with his crew. The aliens had been watching them. For how long? "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth vessel Valiant," Jake said toward the communications pickup. "We welcome this historic meeting between our species. Commander Morrison, we are pleased to make formal contact. We represent a vast civilization that spans many star systems. Your species has reached a level of development where contact is now appropriate." Dr. Rodriguez leaned over to Jake and whispered, "They're talking about us like we're children who just learned to walk." The alien voice continued, "We would like to invite representatives from your ship to visit our vessel. We have much to discuss about your species' future." Jake felt that uneasy feeling grow stronger. "Our future? What do you mean by that?" "All species must eventually join the greater galactic community, Commander. We are here to guide humanity through this transition. It's for your own benefit." "Sir," Lisa whispered urgently, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from those ships. Their power output is off the charts. Jake nodded grimly. These aliens clearly had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. We appreciate your offer, he said aloud, but we'll need to consult with our government first. Of course, Commander. We understand your caution. Perhaps a small demonstration of our peaceful intentions would help. Before Jake could respond, the Valiant's weapons systems suddenly went dark. Every screen showing weapon status flickered and went black. The ship's defensive shields vanished completely. What the hell just happened? Jake demanded. Lieutenant Carter's face was pale as he worked frantically at his console. Sir, they've somehow disabled our entire weapons and defense grid. I can't get any of it back online. The alien voice spoke again, still calm and musical. Please do not be alarmed. Hey, we have simply deactivated your weapons temporarily. This is to show you that we mean no harm. If we wished to destroy you, we could have done so easily. Instead, we offer friendship. Jake felt cold sweat on his forehead. The aliens had taken control of his ship's systems without even trying. They could have destroyed the Valiant in seconds, but instead, they were talking about friendship and guidance. Your weapons will be returned when we conclude our discussion, the voice continued. We hope this demonstrates both our power and our peaceful intentions. Dr. Rodriguez moved closer to Jake. Commander, this is incredible technology. We're controlling our systems from outside our ship. I've never seen anything like it. Alas, sir, Lisa said quietly. I'm detecting more ships approaching. Lots more. Jake looked at the main screen as dozens of new contacts appeared on the scanner. The 3 large ships were apparently just the beginning. An entire fleet was gathering around the Valiant. Do not be concerned about our numbers, the alien voice said, somehow knowing what they were seeing. We bring many ships because this is an important moment for your species. The galactic sovereignty welcomes humanity into the greater community of intelligent life. What exactly does that mean? Jake asked. It means that your species will be given a place in our civilization. You'll be protected, guided, and helped to reach your full potential. In return, you will contribute your unique abilities to the greater good. Jake didn't like the sound of that. It sounded less like an invitation and more like a demand. And if we prefer to remain independent? There was a pause before the alien voice responded. Independence is an illusion, Commander. No species can survive alone in the galaxy. Those who try to remain isolated inevitably face extinction. We offer survival and prosperity. The largest of the alien ships began to move closer to the Valiant. As it approached, Jake could see that it was even more massive than he had first thought. The human ship looked like a tiny insect next to it. Commander Morrison, we invite you and your senior officers to board our vessel. There's much we need to discuss about humanity's integration into the sovereignty. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. The aliens had made it clear that they had overwhelming power. The Valiant was completely helpless against their technology. But something in the aliens' words bothered him. They kept talking about integration and contribution, but they hadn't asked what humanity wanted. They seemed to assume that joining their civilization was inevitable. We'll need some time to consider your offer, Jake said finally. Of course, Commander. Time is not a concern for us. We have waited this long to make contact. You can wait a little longer for your answer. The alien ships remained motionless around the Valiant, like silent guardians. Jake stared at them through the main screen and wondered if humanity was about to make the biggest mistake in its history. 3 days had passed since the first meeting with the Zephyrians. Captain Amy Sullivan stood in the diplomatic conference room aboard the USS Horizon, watching as the alien ambassador materialized in front of her. The Zephyrian called himself. Kethver, in his holographic form, looked almost human, except for his pale blue skin and completely black eyes. Captain Sullivan, Kethver said in that same musical voice they had heard before. We are pleased that Earth has sent a diplomatic vessel to continue our discussions. Amy forced herself to smile. We're honored to meet with you, Ambassador. Humanity is very interested in learning more about your civilization. Excellent. The Galactic Sovereignty has prepared a comprehensive integration program for your species. We will begin with the most suitable human populations. Amy frowned. Most suitable? What do you mean by that? Different human groups will serve different functions in our society. Some will be modified for physical labor, others for technical work, and some for military service. It is all very organized and efficient. A cold feeling grew in Amy's stomach. Modified? You mean changed somehow? Yes, of course. Your species requires improvements to function properly in our civilization. Do not worry, the process is painless, and the results are beneficial for everyone. Meanwhile, 200 light-years away, Marine Colonel Steve Hayes was leading a reconnaissance mission to a planet called Kepler-4 for 2b. The planet had been colonized by humans 50 years ago. All communication had stopped 6 months earlier. The colonists had sent their last message saying they had made contact with friendly aliens. "Sir, I'm seeing structures ahead," reported Sergeant Linda Clark as their transport ship approached the planet's surface. "But they don't look like our colony buildings." Steve looked through the viewport and saw strange, curved structures that seemed to be made of the same material as the Zephyrian ships. "Set us down outside the colony perimeter. We'll go in on foot." The team of 12 Marines landed quietly and began moving toward what had once been New Phoenix Colony. As they got closer, Steve noticed that something was very wrong. The human buildings were still there, but they looked abandoned and damaged. "Colonel," whispered Private Danny Moore, "I'm seeing movement in the colony, but it doesn't look right." Steve raised his binoculars and looked toward the colony center. What he saw made his blood run cold. There were humans walking around, but they moved in a strange, mechanical way. Their faces were blank and emotionless, and they all wore identical gray clothing. "They look like robots," Danny said quietly. "Quiet," Steve ordered. "We need to get closer." The Marines moved carefully through the abandoned outer buildings. Everything was covered in dust, as if people had simply stopped living there and walked away. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere, but there were no signs of violence or struggle. As they reached the colony center, Steve saw more of the strange humans. They were working on building something, but their movements were slow and repetitive. None of them spoke to each other or showed any emotion. "My God," breathed Sergeant Clark. "What happened to them?" Steve was about to answer when he saw something that made him freeze. One of the workers turned toward them, and Steve recognized the face. It was Mayor Patricia Wong, who had been in charge of the colony. But her eyes were empty and lifeless, and there was a small metal device attached to her neck. "We need to get one of them," Steve whispered, carefully. The Marines managed to isolate one of the modified humans, a man who had once been a farmer named Bill Jackson. When they spoke to him, he responded, but his voice was flat and emotionless. "I serve the sovereignty," Bill said when they asked what had happened. "We all serve the sovereignty. It is good to serve." "Bill, it's me, Colonel Hayes. I was here for the colony's anniversary 2 years ago. Don't you remember?" Bill stared at him with empty eyes. "I remember serving the sovereignty. That is all that matters." Steve felt sick. Whatever the Zephyrians had done to these people, they had destroyed their minds and turned them into living tools. Back on the USS Horizon, Dr. Rachel Kim was analyzing biological samples that the Zephyrians had provided as gifts, they claimed. The samples would help humanity understand how the integration process worked. "Captain Sullivan," Rachel said as she looked at her test results, "you need to see this immediately." Amy hurried to the medical bay where Rachel was working. "What did you find?" "These samples aren't just biological material, or some kind of virus or parasite that's designed to change human brain chemistry." Rachel showed Amy the microscopic images on her screen. "Look at this. It attacks the parts of the brain that control independent thought and emotion." Amy stared at the images in horror. "You mean it's a mind control device? Worse than that? It doesn't just control minds. It changes them permanently. The infected person becomes incapable of thinking for themselves or feeling normal emotions. They become perfect slaves. How long would it take to affect someone? Based on these samples, I'd say about 2 weeks for the full effect. But it starts working immediately. Within hours, the person would begin to feel more calm and compliant." Amy felt her hands shaking. "Rachel, I need you to test everyone who's had contact with the Zephyrians, including me." While Rachel ran her tests, Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez was working in the ship's communication center. He had been trying to intercept Zephyrian communications, and he had finally succeeded in decoding some of their messages. Captain Tony called over the intercom, "You need to come to the communication center right now." "I've found something," Terrible. Amy rushed to Tony's station where he was playing a translated Zephyrian message. The human specimens show good potential for modification, the voice said. The physically strong ones will make excellent miners after brain modification. The intelligent ones can be used for technical work, but their creativity must be completely suppressed. The aggressive ones will serve as soldiers once we remove their ability to question orders. Amy felt her legs go weak. They're talking about us like we're animals. It gets worse, Tony said grimly. He played another message. Begin Phase 1. Preparations on all human colonies. Introduce the biological agents through medical assistance programs. Tell them it's to help with diseases. They will accept it willingly. Medical assistance programs, Amy repeated. Captain Rachel's voice came over the intercom. I need you in the medical bay immediately. The test results are back. Amy ran to the medical bay, where Rachel was waiting with a grim expression. The good news is that none of our crew has been infected yet, Rachel said. But Captain, I've been analyzing reports from Earth. The Zephyrians have been providing medical aid to several human colonies, claiming it's to help with various diseases. Oh no, Amy whispered. The colonies that receive this aid have all reported that their people are becoming more peaceful and cooperative. The colonial governments think it's a good thing, but based on what I've seen, I think the Zephyrians are already starting their modification process. Amy slammed her hand on the medical table. How many colonies? At least 12 that I know of. Maybe more. Amy activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Sullivan to all stations. We are leaving this system immediately. Course for Earth, maximum speed. Captain, came the voice of her navigation officer. The Zephyrians are requesting another meeting. Tell them we'll contact them later, Amy ordered. Right now we have an emergency to report to Earth Command. As the USS Horizon jumped too faster than light speed, Amy stared out at the stars and realized that humanity was in terrible danger. The Zephyrians weren't here to help or guide them. They were here to turn the entire human race into a species of slaves. The friendly aliens who had promised to welcome humanity into the galactic community were actually planning to destroy everything that made humans human. And they had already begun. Amy knew that when they reached Earth, she would have to convince the government that humanity's first contact with alien life might also be their last contact as a free species. The Zephyrians had made a mistake, though. They had assumed that humans would accept their fate quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The emergency meeting at Earth Command headquarters was the most important gathering in human history. Admiral Karen Thompson sat at the head of the long table, surrounded by military leaders, scientists, and politicians from around the world. The reports from Captain Sullivan and Colonel Hayes had changed everything. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Secretary of State Paul Davis, his face pale with shock. These aliens want to turn our entire species into slaves? That's exactly what they want, Admiral Thompson replied grimly. They've already started on 12 colonies. We estimate that over 2 million humans have been infected with their biological agents. Dr. Rachel Kim stood up to address the room. The infection works in stages. First, people become more calm and cooperative, and they lose their ability to think independently. Finally, they become completely obedient slaves, with no will of their own. General Rick Foster slammed his fist on the table. Them. We use every weapon we have. With what? Asked Dr. Elena Shaw, the chief physicist. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They disabled the Valiant's entire weapon system without even trying. There has to be something we can do, General Foster insisted. We can't just surrender our entire species. Admiral Thompson activated a holographic display showing the Zephyrian ships. Our conventional weapons are useless against their shields. Their ships are faster and more powerful than anything we have. A direct military confrontation would be suicide. Captain Sullivan, who had just returned from her mission, spoke up. Admiral, there's something else. The Zephyrians seem to believe that we'll accept their plan once we understand it. They think we should be grateful for their help. Grateful? Secretary Davis looked horrified. They want to destroy our minds and turn us into tools? They don't see it that way, Captain Sullivan explained. To them, we're just animals that need to be domesticated. They think they're doing us a favor by giving us purpose in their society. Meanwhile, on the occupied colony of New Phoenix, Marine Captain Dan Miller was leading a secret mission. He and his team had been sent to gather intelligence and look for ways to fight back against the Zephyrians. "Stay low and move quietly," Dan whispered to his squad as they approached the colony. "We need to find out how their control system works." The team had been watching the colony for 3 days. They had learned that the Zephyrians use small flying devices to monitor the controlled humans. The devices looked like metal insects and seemed to be everywhere. "Captain," whispered Sergeant Nancy Wright, "I think I see a pattern. The flying things patrol in regular routes. There's a gap in their coverage near the old water treatment plant." Dan nodded. "That's our way in. We need to capture one of the controlled humans and study that device on their neck." The team moved carefully through the abandoned buildings. The controlled humans worked during the day and returned to dormitories at night. They never spoke to each other and never showed any emotion. "It's like they're robots," said Private Kevin Jones quietly. "No," Dan replied. "Robots would be more efficient. These people still have human bodies, but their minds are gone." They managed to isolate a controlled human who had once been a teacher named Mary Peters. The metal device on her neck was small but complex, with tiny wires that seemed to go directly into her brain. "Mary," Dan said softly, "can you hear me?" Mary looked at him with empty eyes. "I serve the sovereignty." "All humans serve the sovereignty. It is good to serve." "Mary, you taught my daughter Jennifer 3 years ago. She loved your science classes. Don't you remember?" For just a moment, something flickered in Mary's eyes. "Jennifer," she whispered. Then the device on her neck glowed brighter, and her expression went blank again. "I serve the sovereignty." Dan felt sick, but he had learned something important. Part of the original person was still there, buried under the alien control. Maybe there was hope. Back on Earth, Dr. Shaw was working frantically in her laboratory. She had been studying the data from the Zephyrian ships, looking for any weakness they could exploit. "Their technology is incredible," she told her assistant engineer commander, Alex Turner. "But it's also very different from ours. They rely heavily on quantum entanglement for communication and control." "What does that mean for us?" Alex asked. "Means their entire system depends on quantum networks. If we could disrupt those networks, we might be able to interfere with their technology." Dr. Shaw had been working for 18 hours straight, fueled by coffee and desperation. "Alex, look. At this, their ships generate specific electromagnetic frequencies to maintain their quantum entanglement. If we could create a device that produces the exact opposite frequency, we could disrupt their systems," Alex finished, excitement growing in his voice. "Exactly. It wouldn't destroy their ships, but it might interfere with their shields and weapons long enough for us to fight back." While the scientists worked on technical solutions, the military was facing a growing crisis. Reports were coming in from around the galaxy. The Zephyrians weren't just targeting Earth's colonies. They were moving toward the home system itself. Admiral reported Communications Officer Lieutenant Barry Chen. "We're receiving distress signals from the Mars colonies. Zephyrian ships have been spotted in the outer system." Admiral Thompson felt her heart sink. "How many ships?" "At least 50, ma'am. They're moving toward Mars slowly, like they're in no hurry." General Foster stood up from the strategy table. "We have to evacuate the colonies." "Evacuate to where?" Admiral Thompson asked. "They have faster ships than us. They'll catch any evacuation." "Fleet. Then we make our stand here," General Foster said grimly. "We fight them in Earth's solar system." "With what weapons?" Dr. Shaw asked as she entered the room. "Rick, our best ships would last maybe 10 minutes against their technology. Then we find another way," General Foster replied. "Humans have been fighting hopeless battles for thousands of years. Sometimes we even win." Dr. Shaw smiled for the first time in days. "Actually, we might have found something. Alex and I have been working on a way to disrupt their quantum systems." She explained her discovery about the electromagnetic frequencies. "We can't build weapons that will destroy their ships, but we might be able to build devices that will interfere with their technology." "How long would that take?" Admiral Thompson asked. "With every available facility working on it, Maybe 2 weeks? We don't have 2 weeks, General Foster said. The Zephyrians will be here in 5 days. Then we'll have to delay them somehow. Admiral Thompson decided we need to buy time for Dr. Shaw to finish her work. Captain Sullivan had an idea. Admiral, what if we pretend to negotiate? The Zephyrians think we're primitive. They might believe we're ready to surrender. You want to lie to them? Want to make them think we're considering their offer while we prepare our real response? Admiral Thompson nodded slowly. It might work. They seem to expect us to give. And eventually, there's something else, Captain Sullivan added. Captain Miller's reports from New Phoenix show that the controlled humans still have some awareness buried inside them. If we can find a way to break the control devices, we might be able to free the people they've already captured, Doctor. Shaw finished. For the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Thompson felt a spark of hope. The Zephyrians had superior technology, but they had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that humans would accept defeat quietly. All right, she said to the room. Here's what we're going to do. We'll pretend to negotiate while we prepare our real response. Dr. Shaw, you have 5 days to create weapons that can disrupt their systems. General Foster, prepare our fleets for a battle unlike anything we've ever fought. And if this doesn't work? Secretary Davis asked quietly. Admiral Thompson looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Then we'll make sure the Zephyrians remember that humans don't make good slaves. We'll fight them until there's nothing left to fight with. The room fell silent, as everyone understood what she meant. This wasn't just about winning or losing. This was about proving that humanity deserved to remain free, no matter what the cost. The massive Zephyrian fleet hung in space like a cluster of silver stars, 50 ships strong and heading straight for Earth. Admiral Karen Thompson stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, humanity's newest and most advanced warship, watching the enemy approach on the main screen. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Grace Miller, the Zephyrians are requesting communication. Put them through, Admiral Thompson ordered. Though her stomach was tight with tension, the familiar musical voice of Ambassador Cuthbert filled the bridge. Admiral Thompson, we are pleased that humanity has chosen to be reasonable. We are prepared to begin the integration process immediately, Ambassador Admiral Thompson replied, keeping her voice steady. We need more time to prepare our people. This is a big change for our species. Of course, Admiral, we understand your concerns. We'll begin with your outer colonies first. The process will be gradual and peaceful. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that humanity had spent the last 5 days preparing for war. Dr. Shaw's quantum disruptors were installed on every human ship, though they were carefully hidden inside normal-looking equipment. The devices were untested, but they represented humanity's only hope. Admiral, whispered Dr. Shaw, who was stationed on the bridge, the disruptors are ready. But we only get one chance. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll adapt their systems. Admiral Thompson nodded slightly. Around Earth, 47 human ships were positioned in what looked like a defensive formation. Zephyrians probably thought the humans were preparing to surrender. But they were actually preparing to fight the most important battle in human history. Commander Jake Morrison, now in charge of the rebuilt USS Valiant, was leading the first attack group. His ship had been equipped with the most powerful quantum disruptor that Dr. Shaw could build. Jake, Admiral Thompson said over the private communication channel, remember, we need to hit them all at once. If even one ship escapes, they'll warn the rest of their empire. Understood, Admiral? All ships report ready. The Zephyrian fleet continued its slow approach toward Earth. They seemed completely confident, as if they were just coming to collect property that already belonged to them. Admiral Ambassador Cuthbert said, we are ready to begin the integration of your Mars colonies. Please instruct your people there to cooperate, of course, Ambassador. We're sending the instructions now. What Admiral Thompson was actually sending was the attack signal. Every human ship in the solar system received the same message at the same time. Operation Prometheus begins now. The USS Valiant fired first. Instead of normal weapons, it launched a massive electromagnetic pulse designed to disrupt the Zephyrian quantum networks. The pulse hit the nearest alien ship, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Zephyrian ship's perfect silver surface began to flicker. The smooth, glowing hull became dull and dark. The ship suddenly looked vulnerable. It's working, Doctor, Shaw shouted. Their shields are down. All around the solar system, human ships fired their quantum disruptors. The Zephyrian fleet, which had seemed so powerful and unstoppable, suddenly found itself blind and defenseless. Now Admiral Thompson ordered, "Hit them with everything we have." The human ships opened fire with conventional weapons. Missiles, lasers, and kinetic projectiles slammed into the Zephyrian vessels. For the first time in the war, human weapons were actually causing damage. But the Zephyrians were not helpless. Even without their advanced technology, their ships were still large and heavily built. They began to return fire with backup weapons that didn't rely on quantum systems. Admiral reported Captain Lisa Parker. From the USS Defiant, they're adapting faster than we expected. Some of their ships are getting their shields back online. "Keep firing," Admiral Thompson ordered. We knew this wouldn't last long. The battle raged across the solar system. Human ships, smaller and more agile than the Zephyrian vessels, darted between the enemy fleet like angry wasps. The aliens' superior technology was neutralized. But they still had the advantage of size and numbers. Commander Morrison's ship took a direct hit from a Zephyrian energy weapon. The Valiant shook violently, and several crew members were thrown from their seats. "Damage report," Jake called out. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Tom Carter. We're losing atmosphere. Seal it off and keep fighting," Jake ordered. "We're not giving up now." On the surface of Earth, people watched the battle through telescopes and news broadcasts. For the first time, they could see their military actually fighting back against the alien invaders. The sight gave them hope. In the middle of the battle, something unexpected happened. The controlled humans on the occupied colonies began to wake up. The quantum disruptors were interfering with the control devices on their necks. On New Phoenix Colony, Mary Peters suddenly stopped her mindless work and looked around in confusion. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice full of fear and bewilderment. All around her, other colonists were having the same experience. The metal devices on their necks were sparking and smoking as the quantum interference disrupted their signals. Captain Dan Miller, who had been hiding in the colony for days, saw what was happening and immediately contacted his team. "This is our chance. The control devices are failing. We can free these people." The Marines moved quickly through the colony, helping the confused colonists remove the damaged control devices. Many of the people were weak and disoriented, but they were human again. "What happened to us?" asked Bill Jackson, the former farmer, who had been one of the first people Dan's team had encountered. "You were controlled by the aliens," Dan explained. "But you're free now. Can you help us get the others to safety?" Bill nodded, anger replacing confusion in his eyes. "Those things turned us into slaves. How do we fight back?" Meanwhile, in space, the battle was reaching a critical point. The human fleet had destroyed 12 Zephyrian ships, but they had lost 8 of their own. The quantum disruptors were losing effectiveness as the aliens adapted their technology. "Admiral," Dr. Shaw said urgently, "the disruptors are failing. The Zephyrians are finding ways around our interference." Admiral Thompson made a decision that would change everything. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. Prepare for nuclear strike." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity's nuclear weapons had been considered obsolete against the Zephyrians' advanced technology. But Admiral Thompson had a different plan. Admiral Commander Morrison said over the communication channel, "Are you sure about this?" "Jake, we're not using the nuclear weapons as bombs. We're using them as the biggest electromagnetic pulse generators ever built. Dr. Shaw says that if we detonate them in the right pattern, we can create a quantum interference field that will disable their entire fleet." It was incredibly dangerous. The nuclear explosions would have to be precisely timed and positioned. If they got it wrong, they would destroy their own ships along with the aliens. "All ships move to minimum safe distance," Admiral Thompson ordered. "We have one chance to get this right." The human fleet pulled back while the Zephyrians continued their attack, not understanding what was happening. They had dismissed human nuclear weapons as primitive tools, but they were about to learn that sometimes the oldest weapons could be the most effective. "Dr. Shaw," Admiral Thompson said, "you have the calculations. Are you ready?"
Dr. Shaw looked at her instruments, sweat beading on her forehead. "Admiral, the timing has to be perfect."
If we're off by even a few seconds, this won't work.
Then,
We'd better not be off, Admiral Thompson replied grimly. The fate of humanity hung in the balance as the human fleet prepared to use their most desperate weapon against an enemy that had never imagined humans could pose a real threat. The Zephyrians were about to learn that underestimating humanity was the biggest mistake they had ever made. The countdown began across the entire human fleet. Admiral Karen Thompson watched the tactical display as nuclear missiles launched from every ship, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a city. But these weapons weren't aimed at the Zephyrian ships. They were aimed at empty space around the alien fleet. 10 seconds to detonation, Dr. Shaw announced, her voice steady despite the sweat on her face. All ships maintain minimum safe distance. The Zephyrians seemed confused by the human strategy. Ambassador Cuthbert's voice came over the communication channel, no longer musical but harsh with anger. Admiral Thompson, your nuclear weapons cannot penetrate our shields. This is a futile gesture, maybe, Admiral Thompson replied.
yeah, but we're not aiming at your ships.
The nuclear weapons exploded in a carefully planned pattern around the Zephyrian fleet. Instead of trying to destroy the alien ships directly, the explosions created a massive electromagnetic pulse that covered the entire area. The pulse was so powerful that it disrupted quantum entanglement across millions of cubic kilometers of space. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Zephyrian ship suddenly went dark. Their shields failed completely, their weapons stopped working, and their engines shut down. The magnificent silver fleet hung in space like dead metal, powerless and vulnerable. It worked, Dr. Shaw shouted. The quantum interference field is holding. They're completely disabled. All ships attack now, Admiral Thompson ordered. This is our chance. The human fleet converged on the helpless Zephyrian ships like a pack of wolves. Without their advanced technology, the alien vessels were just large, slow targets. Human weapons tore through their hulls, causing explosions and fires throughout the enemy fleet. But the humans weren't just trying to destroy the ships, they were trying to capture them. Admiral Thompson knew that humanity needed to understand Zephyrian technology if they were going to defend themselves against future attacks. Jake, she called to Commander Morrison, take your boarding teams and secure the command ship. We need prisoners and information. Commander Morrison led a team of Marines onto the largest Zephyrian vessel. The ship's interior was beautiful, but alien, with curved walls and soft lighting that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The Marines moved carefully through the corridors, expecting resistance. What they found instead were confused and frightened aliens. Without their technology, the Zephyrians seemed lost and helpless. They had relied on their advanced systems for so long that they had forgotten how to fight without them. Surrender, Morrison called out in the universal translation language. Your ships are destroyed. Your weapons don't work. Give up now, and we won't hurt you. The Zephyrians looked at each other with their large black eyes. They had never imagined that the primitive humans could defeat them. Their entire civilization was built on the idea that they were superior to other species. Supreme Commander Vashtel, the leader of the Zephyrian fleet, finally stepped forward. He was taller than the other aliens, with silver markings on his blue skin that showed his high rank. This is impossible, Vashtel said in perfect English. Your species is primitive. You cannot defeat the galactic sovereignty. We just did, Morrison replied. Your technology made you powerful, but it also made you weak. You forgot how to fight without it. Meanwhile, across the solar system, the human fleet was finishing off the remaining Zephyrian ships. Some aliens tried to escape in smaller vessels, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable in normal space. Captain Lisa Parker, now commanding the USS Defiant, pursued a fleeing Zephyrian scout ship toward Jupiter. Parker to alien vessel. Stop your engines and prepare to be boarded. The alien ship tried to use its superior speed to escape, but without quantum enhancement, it was no faster than human ships. Lisa's crew captured it near Jupiter's moons, adding another prize to humanity's growing collection of alien technology. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread quickly. People gathered in the streets, cheering and crying with relief. 4. The first time since the crisis began, they felt hope for the future. But Admiral Thompson knew the war wasn't over. The Zephyrians had mentioned a vast galactic empire. This fleet was just the beginning. Dr. Shaw, she said, how long can we maintain the quantum interference field? Maybe 6 more hours, Dr. Shaw replied. The nuclear radiation is starting to fade. That gave them time to secure the prisoners and captured ships, but not much more. Admiral Thompson knew they needed to act fast. She ordered the captured Zephyrians to be brought to the command ship. Supreme Commander Vashtol was placed in a secure holding area where he could be questioned, Commander Admiral Thompson said. When she met the alien leader, your invasion has failed. But we know there are more of you out there. How many ships does your empire have? Vashtol stared at her with hatred in his black eyes. You have won this battle, but you cannot win the war. The sovereignty has thousands of ships. They will come for you. Let them come, Admiral Thompson replied. We'll be ready. You do not understand, Vashtol said. Your species is meant to serve. That is the natural order. You're animals pretending to be civilized. Admiral Thompson felt anger rising in her chest. We're not animals. We're human beings. And we don't serve anyone. You will learn, Vashtol said. When the full might of the sovereignty arrives, you will beg to serve us. But Admiral Thompson had already learned something important from the captured alien technology. The Zephyrians. Quantum communication systems worked across vast distances. If she could figure out how to use them, she could send a message to the galactic sovereignty. Dr. Shaw worked frantically to decode the alien communication systems. With help from the freed colonists who had been modified by the Zephyrians, she began to understand how their technology worked. Admiral Dr. Shaw said after hours of work, I think I can send a message through their quantum network. It will reach their homeworlds instantly. Good, Admiral Thompson said. I want to send them a message they'll never forget. The message went out across the galaxy, transmitted on every Zephyrian frequency. It was simple and direct, recorded. In Admiral Thompson's own voice, this is Admiral Karen Thompson of the United Earth Defense Forces. Your invasion fleet has been destroyed. Your soldiers are our prisoners. Your technology has been captured. We know you planned to turn our species into slaves, but you made a crucial mistake. You thought we were weak because our technology was primitive. You thought we would surrender because your ships were bigger. You were wrong. Humanity does not surrender. We do not serve. We do not kneel. Any other alien species that tries to conquer us will meet the same fate. We are sending your survivors home with this message. First contact with humanity was your last mistake. Stay away from our worlds, or we will show you what happens when you underestimate the human spirit. The message was broadcast with enough power to reach every corner of the galactic sovereignty, across the galaxy. Alien leaders who had never heard of humanity suddenly learned that a primitive species had defeated one of their most powerful fleets. In the weeks that followed, humanity worked to reverse the damage done to the controlled colonists. Dr. Rachel Kim developed treatments that could repair most of the brain damage caused by the Zephyrian devices. The freed colonists were angry and determined to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Commander? Morrison was promoted to Admiral and put in charge of Earth's new alien defense program. Using captured Zephyrian technology, humanity began building better ships and weapons. They also began sending their own messages into space, warning other species about the galactic sovereignty and offering to help any world that wanted to resist alien conquest. The Zephyrians who survived the battle were eventually returned to their empire, but they carried with them the knowledge that humanity was not the helpless species they had expected. The galaxy had learned that humans were dangerous when threatened, creative under pressure, and absolutely unwilling to accept slavery. Years later, when other alien species made contact with humanity, they came as equals seeking friendship and trade. The word had spread throughout the galaxy. Humans were not to be conquered or controlled. They were to be respected. The first contact between humanity and the Zephyrians had indeed been the aliens' last mistake. But it was also the beginning of humanity's emergence as a major power in the galaxy, feared by tyrants and welcomed by the free.